Hello, everyone, and welcome to Daily English Dose. Today, I won't just tell you a story. I'll tell you about a real life experience of a girl who spent her life in silence and how she rose up using the power of hope, patience, and words, even in the hardest times. This story will not only improve your English listening skills, but will also inspire you. Our hero is Diana, and her story will show us just how powerful hope and patience can be. By the end of this video, you'll believe that every hardship can be overcome. So, listen carefully. I'm Diana. I was 7 years old when I lost my mom and dad in a car accident. From that moment on, I didn't just lose my family, I lost my voice. I stopped talking, I forgot how to laugh, and even my tears flowed only on the inside. For the first few months after the accident, I stayed at my aunt and uncle's house. The walls in their home were just as cold as those of the orphanage. It was a place of sterile cleanliness and stifling quiet. I was given a tiny room in the attic, with a window that looked out onto a bare brick wall. Every day, I would sit on the edge of the bed, feeling like I was suspended between two worlds, the one I had lost and the one that didn't want me. At night, from behind my bedroom door, I would hear them arguing about what to do with me. We already have 3 kids of our own. What are we going to do with her? She's just a reminder of everything that's happened. My aunt would say, her voice like a knife twisting in my heart. My uncle would just say, she's just another mouth to feed. The state will take care of her. These words slowly turned my heart into a block of ice. In their eyes, I wasn't a child, I was a problem. I tried to help them, doing chores, staying quiet, but no matter what I did, I couldn't earn their love. Finally, one day my aunt called me over and without looking me in the eye said, "You are nothing but a burden to us. We can't take care of you. Pack your things." At that moment, I lost not only my family, but also the last bit of hope I had left. And so, I found myself at the gates of the orphanage. The air there was just as cold as it was at my aunt's house. The orphanage completely sealed my heart. The children there were organized into strict groups, and I, the newcomer, was immediately an outcast. The older children called me quiet girl or ghost, and their voices would echo in the long institutional hallways. I learned to blend into the shadows, a forgotten figure in a place full of forgotten children. One of the worst moments was when a new kid found a small red car hidden under my pillow. It was my favorite toy, given to me by my mom for my birthday. The other children gathered around the car, laughing and teasing me. While they were mocking me, I just sat there, clutching the car. Instead of crying for hours, I quietly took it and ran to the back of the building, where I curled up in a corner and just held the car tightly, feeling the phantom warmth of my mother's hand on my cheek. Their laughter was the loudest noise to me. The days at the orphanage were long and monotonous. The matron, a stern woman with a perpetually tight bun, enforced the rules with an iron hand. We had to wake up at 5 a.m., do our chores, and eat tasteless porridge for breakfast. I didn't know how to complain. I just kept my head down, my eyes on my books, and protected the silent strength inside me. Every morning, before the other children woke up, I would go to the window and watch the sunrise, imagining a world beyond the orphanage walls. My little bed became my sanctuary, my refuge from the chaos. I would make sure my sheets were taut and smooth, just as my mom had taught me. The silence in the room was only broken by my own inner voice and the fairy tales my mom used to whisper to me. Her voice, so vivid and warm in my memory, was my most precious treasure. My only companions were the worn-out books I found in an old, dusty box. One day, a new teacher came to our small school inside the orphanage. Her name was Mrs. Anya. She had a soft smile and gentle eyes that seemed to see right through my quiet exterior. She never asked why I was so quiet, She just handed me an old book with yellowing pages. Its name was The Voice of Eternity, and it contained the poems of an orphaned poet who had tried to find his own voice. The poet's poems were about nature and the immense strength one can find within themselves, even in the darkest of times. Every line of the poems turned the silent storm inside me into hope. I read that book every day, every night, under my thin blanket, with the light of a small flashlight I found. The poet's every verse was a whisper, a guide for me. At school, I started sitting in the front row, not to be seen, but to be close to Mrs. Anya. I never raised my hand to speak, but when she asked a question, my eyes would light up with the answer. She would sometimes nod at me and say, "Diana knows the answer. Can you share it with us?" The other kids would laugh, but Mrs. Anya always waited. Her understanding that my silence wasn't a weakness but a place for thoughts to grow helped me trust in words. By the time I was 14, my mind was full of ideas. In an old notebook with a broken pencil, I was writing stories about a little girl who found her voice through the written word. One day, I left my notebook on the desk, and Mrs. Anya found it. I was so scared, thinking she would make fun of my stories. But she read every page, and her eyes filled with tears. "Diana, these aren't just stories. These are wings," she said. From that day on, Mrs. Anya became my mentor. She would often stay late with me, long after the other children were asleep, and together, we'd sit at a small desk in the corner of the classroom. She taught me how to structure a story, how to create compelling characters, and most importantly, how to turn my pain into art. "A writer's job isn't just to write," she said. "It's to give a voice to the voiceless." These words became my compass. When I was 16, a competition for young writers was announced. The prize was a small scholarship and a chance to have my story published in a local newspaper. Everyone, including Mrs. Anya, told me to enter, but I was still afraid. My voice was on the page, not in the air. The thought of my stories being read by strangers filled me with terror. Mrs. Anya sat with me for hours, her hand on my shoulder. "Diana, a story is a gift. It's not for you to keep. It's for you to give," she said. Her encouragement gave me the courage I needed. I submitted my story and waited with a knot in my stomach. A week later, a letter arrived that would change my life. I had won the competition. The orphanage was in a frenzy. The matron, who had always ignored me, now boasted about her talented writer. The other children applauded me, and that day, for the first time, I wasn't seen as quiet girl, but as Diana, the writer. This scholarship was the key to a new life for me. I applied to a university in the city to study literature. Mrs. Anya drove me to the city herself and hugged me like a mother. "Now go find your real voice, Diana. Show the world what a little girl with a big heart can do." The first days at the university were very difficult. It was loud, crowded, and overwhelming. Everyone seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. I was still quiet, but my stories were loud. My professors were impressed by my writing, and I found a small circle of friends who loved books as much as I did. My notebook became my sanctuary. My past, the coldness of the orphanage, and my aunt's cruel words didn't disappear. They became the fuel, the fire for my writing. I never forgot where I came from. At 22, I graduated with honors. Mrs. Anya was there in the audience, her eyes beaming with pride. That day, as I walked across the stage, my heart was full, my head was held high, and I had finally found my voice. They gave me a medal, and at that moment, I thought of my mom and dad, hoping they were proud of me. The little girl who lost her voice was now a storyteller. After graduation, I started writing books. My first book was about a girl who lost everything but found her strength in words. It was a raw, honest portrayal of my life. but I disguised it as fiction. My books quickly became bestsellers. People from all over the world wrote to me. In their letters, they told me how my story had inspired them and how they had kept their hope even in the hardest times. One person wrote that they started writing because of my book, and another wrote that they learned to turn their greatest pain into a work of art. One day, I was invited back to the orphanage to tell my story to the children. As I stood in front of dozens of kids in the cold place where I grew up, my eyes wandered over the gray walls of the orphanage. I felt a surge of emotions. The pain of the past, the joy of the present. I saw myself in the quiet corners, in the big, hopeful eyes of the children. When I finished speaking, a little girl with big, quiet eyes came up to me. In her hand, she held the same book, The Voice of Eternity. She smiled at me and whispered, "I am not afraid to be quiet anymore. Your story showed me how to be brave." At that moment, I understood that my pain had turned into a gift, and my silence had found its voice. This story shows us that pain is not the end. It's the beginning of a stronger path. Diana's story is an inspiration for anyone facing hardships. Sometimes our greatest strength is hidden in our quietest moments, in our hearts and minds. This story proves that if you keep believing in your dreams, even the impossible can become possible. While listening to this story, you not only went on an emotional journey, but also improved your English listening skills. You can listen to the story again to learn new words and phrases and to strengthen your pronunciation. Remember, learning English, just like Diana's dreams, requires patience and dedication. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. What part of this story affected you the most? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Also, don't forget to check out our other videos that can help you on your English learning journey. See you in our next video. Remember, consistent listening, confident speaking.